Like to explain the instinctive process of the human mind that allows for religious belief to exist on the individual level and the collective level. If you look at collective religions, all the book religions, you'll notice that everybody that wrote the books or that was in the books, every single one of them meditated in nature and asked themselves the important questions. And by meditating in nature, they gained the understandings that are contained in nature, by default, because they were in nature, meditating in there, so they gained the understandings. And these understandings strengthened their thought process, so when they asked themselves questions, they were able to answer them. And from this simple process, religions came about. Now, the thing is, I'm going to tell a story to explain how religion works. You may not understand or like what I have to say, but in my mind, it's the truth. And how should I put this? My thoughts do evolve over time, so what I'm going to say may not be the truth, but to me, it's the truth that I've discovered at this point. As time goes on and I understand more things, I'm sure that my thought process will change. So this isn't indefinite. I'm just saying, this is my perspective on religion, how it works. Okay. I don't like the word God, because to me, God is an eternal element of consciousness that exists, kind of like water and all the other elements. An element like that, an element of eternal consciousness that exists. Prior to the elements in this reality existing, there was an element of eternal consciousness that existed eternally, an eternal being. I do not believe this eternal being was male or female, or even had eyes or a nose or a mouth or ears or any of that stuff, They're an eternal being. They don't need things needed to survive on this planet, So why would they even have human emotions needed for survival, So to me, that's what God is. I don't like the word God, but to me, God is an eternal element of consciousness that exists. That's it. And in eternity, this eternal consciousness had a thought, the complete thought of this universe. And now this thought is beyond any of our comprehensions with our little meat minds, because, we're limited in our thought. But for an element of eternal consciousness, in eternity, that's plenty of time to have a complete thought of the universe and to create everything, design everything in this universe. And they designed everything in this universe as an artist would. And an artist puts understandings in their creation. And when you look at a tree, when you look at water, when you look at fire, when you look at electricity, when you look at gravity, inertia, all the elements, plant life, animal life, even things that humans existed, or even things that humans created, whatever. That's part of destiny, But everything on this planet, when you observe it with your meat mind, you gain understandings. And when you gain all the understandings God placed in their creation, all their creations in this earth reality, when you gain all of those understandings and you ask yourself questions, you're able to answer them. And when it comes to things like, I like to lump together religion, science, and philosophy. It's the same stuff, You got the Aesop, you got the Da Vinci, you got the Jesus, the Buddha, Mohammed, Joseph Smith, Moses, all those people, Anyways, I lump them all together. Anyways, because we're all part of the human family, whatever. But anyways, so in eternity, God created everything. And he also created the universal laws that govern this reality. And like inertia and gravity and stuff like that. And from the Big Bang, it was perfect. Everything happened perfectly. There was no consciousness. So all these atoms and, force and all this stuff was moving around. And it was destined to react exactly how it's going to react, because the atom doesn't think. It just, it's just being controlled by gravity and inertia and all this stuff. And that caused the planet Earth and everything else to exist. And it also caused the first spark of life to exist. And it caused you and me to exist. And me, for example, I've grown into the person that I am now. It happened before my birth, And it happened in the womb, and it happened from childhood, and it's still going on now. And the person I've grown into right now, when this universe causes me to react, I will use my free will and react exactly the way I'm going to react, because, I'm the person I am, so I'm going to react exactly how I'm going to react. Down to the minute detail, down to the wind blowing my hair, down to every atom that exists in this universe. And I know it's a complex thought, but for an element of eternal consciousness, God, it would just be a matter of time. Now, the simple fact that God put understandings in this universe, in this reality, and we can gain these understandings and strengthen our mind, and this, by strengthening our mind, we're able to answer questions, and we all ask the same questions like, who's God? Does God exist? How should I live my life? You know? How do I eat food? How do I feed people around me? How do I stop wars? How do I, all these questions that people always ask. You ask these questions, these religious and philosophy and scientific questions. You ask yourself these questions, and if you gain the understandings that God has placed in their creation, you'll be able to answer them, and you'll be able to get God's wisdom and God's advice. People like to think that God abandoned us. God's been here the entire time. God's an element of eternal consciousness. We use consciousness to search for consciousness, but we can't find consciousness. But the simple fact that we use consciousness to search for consciousness tells us the consciousness that exists. So it's something that exists. I'm just saying that it existed before, humans existed. It existed before life existed, It's like an element, like water. It exists, whatever. And this whole thing, this instinctive process is the Word of God. And the simple fact is, the Word of God's not written down in any books or nothing like that. It's just a simple process of the human mind. And everybody has access to it. Whether or not you're alive 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 1,450 years ago, 200 years ago, right now, 10,000 years in the future, 10,000 years in the past, 100,000 years in the future, 100,000 years in the past, you have access to the understandings our God has placed in their creation. And your mind's also their creation, so it's created to gain understandings. So gain those understandings, you dumbass. Gain those goddamn understandings and fucking answer your own fucking questions so you can fucking live your life. Don't rely on advice that someone got 2,000, 3,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 1,450 years ago, whatever, 1,000 years ago, whatever. Don't rely on old advice, because 3,000 years ago, when God was giving Moses advice over there in the desert to these tribesmen that were at war and shit like that, and like had hunger problems, he was also giving advice to some islanders that didn't have no war problems, had plenty of food, and we're living on that paradise type shit. They got advice too. Their advice was way different than what Moses got, but it was the same advice, answered the same questions, but different advice on how to live, stuff like that. So all I'm saying is, yeah, it's the same message. You'll get the same message. Everybody on this planet gets the same message from God, whatever. But you get different advice because we're living different lives. We need different advice. Everybody does. Oh, and also, all conscious life. That's how God talks to all. He gives advice to all conscious life, including dogs and cats and pigs and cows and everything else. Anyways, you're welcome.